Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure this is working. Is it working? Good afternoon, everyone. I think we all know, other than joblessness, the single biggest issue in the country these days is spending and debt. And all 47 Republican senators have come together behind a constitutional amendment to require a balanced budget in order to give us the fiscal discipline to do the job that we need to do, the same job that every family in America does, by making sure we don't live beyond our means. A number of senators have taken the lead on this issue. The person who's sort of been out there on this issue for many years and was our leader when we came within one vote of passing this in 1997 was Senator Hatch. And I want to call on him first, and he will then bring to the podium after him those who've been the leaders on this issue. And actually, everybody has played a role in this. We have a unanimous view in our conference that this particular constitutional amendment would be the right thing for our country. Senator Hatch.
Well, thank you. Back in 1997, when we brought up the balanced budget amendment, at that time, our deficit was $100 billion. Today, it's 16 times that. Our total national debt was around $5 trillion. Today, it's over $14 trillion, headed towards $20 trillion. The spending was a reasonable area of spending against the GDP. Today, we're at about 69%, and according to the CBO, if the president's budget is followed, we're going to hit probably 90% of GDP, which would make us similar to Greece. And that's if the president's budget figures are right. We simply can't live with that. Now, can you imagine, had we passed that amendment and we lacked one vote? I thought we had 67 at that time, and one person did leave that very morning. And we lost by one vote, but had we passed that, we wouldn't be in the terrible fiscal distress that we're in today. And we would have had to make very tough choices, just like every family has to make in balancing their budgets and living within their means. And I think most of us would agree that this government is incapable of living within its means. And we have to go to this extent in order to get things done. So we're filing this balanced budget amendment. All 47 Republicans are on board. We will then work with our colleagues on the other side and see what we can do to get them on board. And hopefully we can pass this balanced budget amendment and get our country into a fiscal situation that really works. I have a lot more I could say, but I'm going to stop at that, and I'm going to call on Senator Lee. And then after Senator Lee, Senator Cornyn, is John here? Senator Cornyn, and then Senator Toomey, and then I'll call on others after that. Senator Lee.
At the end of the day, this is an issue that is neither Democratic nor Republican, neither liberal nor conservative. This issue, our mounting debt, potentially threatens every federal program, every federal expenditure known to man. By the end of this decade, if we continue to spend at our current rate, it's likely that we'll be spending about $1 trillion a year just on interest on national debt. And to put that in perspective, of course, this is substantially more than we spend on Social Security in an entire year. It's more than we spend on Medicare and Medicaid combined in an entire year. It's substantially more than we spend on national defense in an entire year. So regardless of whether you're most concerned about protecting our ability to defend ourselves against foreign aggressors, or on the other hand, you're most concerned about protecting entitlement spending, you should be concerned about perpetual, reckless, runaway deficit spending. And that's what this amendment would put an end to once and for all, thereby protecting all of those programs. Again, programs that are important both to liberals and conservatives alike. This is a time when we have to address the difficult question that arises from the fact that perpetual deficit spending brings about a particularly pernicious form of taxation without representation. One group of elected legislators spends money, and then people who are not yet born or not yet of voting age someday have to pay off the debt left by that group of legislators. We fought a war over taxation without representation, and we won that war. We need to abandon this pernicious practice once and for all, and that's what this does. I'm pleased to support it. I'm very grateful to my colleagues, to Senator Hatch, Senator Cornyn, Senator Kyle, Senator Toomey, and so many others who have helped us with this, and to our minority leader, Mitch McConnell, who's shown so much leadership in getting our party in the Senate behind this.
On November the 2nd of last year, the American people sent a very clear message to all of us, again, as Mike said, whether we're Republicans, Democrats, or independents, that they're sick and tired of the reckless spending and the unsustainable debt. And they wanted us to act together, hopefully on a bipartisan basis. It's the only way it's going to get done, to address that problem. And we can do it. And this constitutional amendment is one way to do that. In 1997, as Senator Hatch said, when there came within one vote of passing a balanced budget amendment, there were 11 Democrats that joined Republicans then. And I hope now that we have gotten an amendment that 47 of us agree to, we will be reaching out to our Democratic colleagues to see if they got the message that we got loud and clear on November the 2nd. We are accountable. We are responsible to the American people for what we do. We usually have those determinations whether we've been good stewards and whether we have done what they expect of us. We find out in an election. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to work together. I hope both sides of the aisle will come together, pass this amendment, and then it will go to the states where 38 states would have to ratify it. And then within 5 years, this balanced budget amendment would be implemented. Senator Toomey.
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying a quick thank you to Senators Hatch and Cornyn on the one hand, and Senators Lee and Kyle. These two groups, these two pairings of senators had produced very thoughtful alternative ideas on how we might reach a balanced budget amendment. And through a lot of hard work, we all came to an agreement on a consensus product that I think is a great product, and importantly, has the universal support of the Republican conference. And to that end, I want to thank Leader McConnell for having the wisdom to seize the opportunity to unite this conference behind this very, very important idea. It's important for many reasons. I want to touch on just one, and that is I am absolutely convinced, as I think many economists are, that we cannot have the economic recovery we need, and we cannot have the job growth that we badly need as long as we have this disastrous fiscal deficit looming over our economy. Getting our fiscal house in order, getting a balanced budget is an absolutely necessary precondition for the strong economic growth and job creation that, frankly, we were sent here to accomplish. So I share the hope that some of my colleagues have alluded to, the hope that there will be a large number of Democratic colleagues who will join with us, join with every single Republican, and pass an amendment to the Constitution that we badly need that will provide the fiscal straitjacket that we need to get our fiscal house in order.
Senator Toomey.
Thanks, Orrin. Well, I was a freshman congressman back in 1997 when the Senate had this vote the last time, and it failed by one vote, Senator Hatch mentioned. And had it passed, it would have passed in the House of Representatives, and I can't help but thinking how much better our country would be today, 14 years later, if we had enacted a balanced budget amendment back then. Because since that time, we have seen dramatic growth in government, dramatic increase in spending and debt, and today it threatens the country on a level like we've never seen before, so much so that the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, calls our national debt the greatest threat to America's national security. I think that speaks volumes. I think that's why this exercise is so important. And we work together as Republicans to come up with a proposal that we would like to put before the Senate, before the American people, and hopefully rally them around and get Democrats on board with this, because it is high time that Washington did what so many states and what every family in this country has to do, and that's balance its budget. South Dakota was the first state in the Union this year to balance its budget, and it took some hard decisions. They cut $127 million, which in South Dakota is a lot of money. It doesn't sound like a lot out here, but they did it the hard way. They made the hard decisions, and because we've got a balanced budget amendment in our state's constitution, they're required to do it. We do it every year. Lots of states do it every year. It's high time that the federal government did it, and it's long overdue. if we are going to get this country back on the right track, growing, creating jobs, and dealing with this massive problem of spending and debt.
Senator Sessions, the budget leader.
Thank you, Orrin, and thank you, all of you who worked so hard to make this a reality. Having examined the amendment, I do think it's solid and will do the job that we hope it to do. And I congratulate those of you who've worked so hard to have a unanimous support for it. We have demonstrated that systemically, it seems, Congress is unable to live within its means. In '97, when the amendment failed by one vote, that was one of the first key votes I cast as a new senator. People were saying we were getting our house in order and maybe we didn't need a balanced budget amendment. Now we have deficits, as Orrin said, 10 times that great. It threatens our financial future. It threatens our jobs. Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson, the co-chairman of President Obama's Budget Debt Commission, signed a joint statement before the Budget Committee, and they said this is the most predictable economic crisis this nation has ever faced. The debt is growing out of control. So I would say that the greatest thing we can do for our economy, the greatest thing we can do to put this country on a path to financial success and growth and vigorous strength in the future is to get our financial house in order. This will do it. I thank those who've worked for it so much, and I do believe it's not a hopeless task. One vote short in '97. I believe we can pass it this time. Thank all of you who've worked so hard.
Thank you, Senator Roberts.
Well, like my colleagues, I want to thank Senator Hatch for his leadership and everybody else for their leadership. This is a team effort, all 47. I know that you all like to write about the times we hit 45 and maybe not 2 or 44. This is all 47 that have signed up for this on this amendment. I think that's one thing to consider. Second thing, I know some of the people in the poli-sci guru department say, well, no, wait a minute, this is not going to work. Everybody talks about a state budget has to be, you know, you have to have, they don't have the printing press. They have to, you know, be in balance. But they don't have the protection in regards to national security. In a declared war, which might be helpful this time around, you can overcome that with 51 votes. So national security is protected. The other thing I would say is that some people that are critical of this is, oh my goodness, how long will it take with 38 states to ratify it? I think that's the proper number. Well, I want to tell you something. And you talk to any state legislator or any governor today and say, is there some way that you can rein in federal spending, in part that goes for the funding of all this regulation and all these mandates that they have to put up with? They're going to say amen. I think it would be the fastest ratification you'd see in a long, long time. Read it up here, long term, long term. That's exactly what we're after here. So while we may not be successful, I don't want to put a wet blanket on this. I haven't seen much leadership from the White House. We can't kick this can down the road to an even-numbered year and then go to 2013 and then bump up against what could be real economic chaos. None of us know when that tip of the spear is going to hit. But if we send a message like this, I think it will signal to the American people we're serious, and more especially to the world and more especially to the financial community. Thank you.
Senator Corker, you want to wait? Senator Minton.
Thank you. Spending has been an addiction for Congress for many years, and I'm very proud of our Republican conference for standing together to break that addiction. And if anyone questions the need for a balanced budget amendment, all we have to do is look at this current debate on funding the government for this year. At a time when the whole world recognizes that America is on an economic cliff, the Democrat Party has yet to even agree to cut this year what we borrow every week. They're not going to join us. They're not going to show the leadership until the Constitution requires that we do it. That's why this balanced budget is so important, and that's why we need to have a vote on this balanced budget amendment before there is any debate or vote on the debt ceiling.
Senator Rich.
If America, as we know it today, is going to be saved, it is imperative that this balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution pass. This institution is not capable of living within its means. This is not a partisan issue. It is an American issue, and it is imperative that we do to the federal government what virtually every state has, and that is a requirement that they balance their budget. It works very well in the states. We need it at the federal level.
Senator Graham and then Senator Hope. Senator Graham.
This is a historic day for the Republican Party. We all agree on something, and it's a big deal. Every end of our party has come to believe that without a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, it's probably not going to happen. And what would it mean? It would mean that political rhetoric gives away to a constitutional mandate. I've come to believe, after being here since 1995, that all the rhetoric in the world is never going to lead to balance in the budget unless something changes pretty soon. And a balanced budget amendment would make us do here what everybody has to do at home. You can't leave town till you get the budget balanced. You would have to say no to people that may be your friends and you would make mad. You'd have to tighten your belt. You'd have to deal with entitlements. You'd have to look at revenue. You'd have to do things that people in the real world do every day. So I hope and pray that we can get some momentum to one day have a constitutional balanced budget amendment to change the way the Congress works, not just for now, but forever. And it's sad to say, I think that's needed.
Thank you, Senator Hatch. Before being elected to the Senate last year, I actually had the distinction of being the longest-serving governor in the United States. I've served as a governor for 10 years for the state of North Dakota. And one thing that we had to do each and every year was balance our budget. Families have to balance their budget. Businesses have to balance their budget. Cities have to balance their budget. States have to balance their budget. Our country needs to balance its budget. Now, I'm pleased that all 47 Republican senators are together on this balanced budget amendment. It provides the right kind of safeguards. It provides safeguard in time of war. It provides transition to get to the balanced budget so that we can address Social Security, Medicare, other programs that are important to people. And I'm very hopeful that with all of the Republicans on this balanced budget amendment now, we can join with our counterparts across the aisle and get it passed. There was a sense of the Senate vote not too long ago, you'll recall, and we picked up 13 Democrat votes. So if you do the math, we're getting close. And I'm hopeful now that we can get enough votes to pass this balanced budget amendment. And again, I want to thank Senator Hatch, Senator Lee, and certainly our leader, Senator McConnell, for their leadership on this incredibly important issue for our country.
Thank you. I want to thank Senator Hatch and all those that have been involved in drafting a constitutional amendment. One of the things that y'all have not seen happening, but has been happening every week, most of the time 2 times a week, is Republicans have been gathering in this room and in another room to talk through those things we need to do over the long haul to make sure that our country becomes fiscally sound. And it's really been a 3-stepped approach. One is to make sure that we negotiate the deepest cuts that we possibly can in the continuing resolution. That's underway right now. A second piece is to have a statutory solution, one that can go into place right now, because we've had financial analysts on both sides of the aisle come in and talk in a bipartisan way about the fact that something has to occur right now. And the third piece is to make sure that over time, after the focus on financial discipline goes away, that we have something to anchor it in, and that's a constitutional amendment. We've had a lot of people working on all 3 phases of this. I think it's shown tremendous leadership by Mitch McConnell and our leadership team to pull us all together around all 3 of these concepts. I believe it is the #1 issue in America. I really do. And I don't want to message. I want us to solve the problem, and I think all of us want to work together to see that happen. And I really appreciate, again, the way the leadership of our party has brought us together to try to do that. And we're reaching out to the other side to try to make sure that this happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Paul.
Thank you, Senator Hatch, for your leadership in this, and Senator McConnell in gathering all 47 Republicans, which I think is very important. The number one problem we face in our country is our debt. We will never, ever balance our budget until we amend our Constitution. It is the single most important vote we will cast. Republicans need this as well as Democrats. We all need a rule that we must obey. This is the single most important vote we will cast this year, and I hope the other side will come and embrace the idea of fiscal sanity again. Thank you.
Senator Bradshaw?
I get home every weekend to Wyoming and sit around and ask people questions and sit around and discuss things. And as I did last week, sat with a group of people and said, well, who here believes they have a better life right now than their parents had? And every hand goes up. And then I asked the question, how many of you believe that your kids will have a better life than you have right now? And the hands all come down. And we talk about why that is. And the reason fundamentally is the debt. The debt is the threat to our future. In Wyoming, I sat in the Senate for 5 years, our state Senate. We had a balanced budget amendment to our own Constitution. We have to balance the budget in Wyoming. Our families need to do it. Our businesses need to do it. And if we're going to have the secure future of this country, the one that we know, that we need, there's only one way to do it, and that's by making sure, by constitutional amendment, that we balance the budget every year in this country. And that's why I'm so glad that 47 of us have come together and unanimously signed on to this approach for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Thank you.
Well, last but not least, Senator Ayotte.
Thank you so much, Senator Hatch and Senator McConnell, for your tremendous leadership on this. I think it says so much that we are all together in what, in my view, is the single most important piece of legislation that we can pass in the United States Senate. And this is about what I heard from New Hampshire voters as I campaigned up and down our state. Why can't you live within your means in Congress? Why doesn't Washington get it like we do at home? And Congress has not been able to live within its means, and that's why this is the single most important piece of legislation that we can pass. And for me, it's about our children. I have 2 small children at home, and we owe it to our children to make sure that they can live their lives free from being indebted to China, that we aren't passing on to them our failure to make the tough decisions today. So I'm so proud to join with my colleagues to make sure that we pass a balanced budget amendment. And I very much hope and look forward to working with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle so that we can pass this and make sure that we live within our means and address our fiscal crisis in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to pay personal tribute to Senator McConnell and Senator Kyl for their leadership on this. They both are just tremendous leaders, and to have us all together on this is a very, very important step in the right direction. So we'll turn it over to you for any questions, and I'll be happy to call on anybody here.
Given that spending as a percentage of GDP has averaged about 21% over the past 40 years, how did you come up with the 18% figure, and how do you get spending down to 18%?
Well, spending right now is at around 25.3%. We haven't had that much spending since World War II, at the height of World War II. So it's clear that we're off the charts from that standpoint. The 18% is the average revenue that we've had over the last 50 years. And we decided that's an appropriate figure to try and shoot for, and that's why the 18%.
Just add one thing to that?
Yeah.
If I could just add one thing to that. You know, as recently as 2007, total federal spending was just barely over 19% of GDP. That was at a time when I would argue Congress was not at all trying to exercise any fiscal discipline, and yet, virtually by accident, here they were at just barely over 19%. It wouldn't take a big lift to go from that level down to 18.
Well, number one, we will have a vote on this. The question, we'll have to let leadership determine that, at least it seems to me. If we're smart, we'll do that. Number two, with regard to Senator Bennett, he voted for the balanced budget in 1997, and I suspect that I suspect he would vote for this one if he was here. Well, I heard it, but I think he'd vote for it. He hasn't talked to me. We chatted together very carefully the last time, and if he wouldn't vote for it, he has a different constituency now, I suppose. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just add just one more other point of context. Under Article 5 of the Constitution, there are two ways to amend the Constitution. One is by a joint resolution of Congress. The second is by a constitutional convention. At an earlier time in our history, we were actually within 2 states in triggering a constitutional convention responsibility by Congress. So I will tell you that this has such power out across the country. People simply don't understand the profligate ways of the Congress and why we can't do what states and families and businesses do. So there is going to continue to be, I would suggest, significant pressure from the states that we do this as well, and I think that's an important part of this context. We need to do it anyway, but that's an important additional pressure.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Well, my preference is we would pass this, and it would moot the whole issue of a constitutional convention. I'm just saying that that is in Article 5 of the Constitution, that that would be an alternative if we don't do our job. I hope we do our job, and that would moot the point.
So one point I want to emphasize again, too, relative to some of the questions that were asked earlier, there are safeguard provisions in this balanced budget amendment. You should take a look at them. They address things like time of war, transition to get to the point where we have the budget in balance, and other issues like that. So we do provide safeguards in this package.
Well, let's put it to you this way. This is a version that all 47 Republicans have agreed on. We had, I think, most everybody last time. I personally believe this is step one. The House is going to pass its version. We'll have to see how close they come to ours, and we'll certainly work it out. But I would prefer this version, and let's hope we can get it through. Well, right now, we're dedicated to this balanced budget amendment, and I do believe we'll have Democrat support on this. Now, time will tell. Well, I expect a number of Democrats to vote for this. We'll have to see. If they don't, I mean, they're going to have to face their citizens, and that's not going to be easy because everybody in this country knows we're in trouble. Everybody knows that we may lose the greatest country in the world, and so we're going to do everything in our power to try and get the Democrats on board, and I hope we can. Senator Lee, you care to remark about that?
I do think that it's going to be imperative for anyone of either House or of either political party who stands for fiscal responsibility and fiscal restraint to vote for this. And for those who voted for the predecessor version of it years ago, I think it would be difficult to articulate an adequate justification why they would vote for that and vote against this. This simply has safeguards built into it to make sure that it's not circumvented. So if you're for the principle of balancing the budget, there's no reason why you shouldn't be in support of this. Well, look, anytime you're talking about passing an act of Congress, there's a reason why people describe something that they want to characterize as a Herculean effort as like getting an act of Congress. When you're trying to get a constitutional amendment passed out of Congress that requires 2/3, it's difficult. So I'm not going to stand here and tell you I'm absolutely certain that we will have 2/3 of both houses locked up by tomorrow. I am telling you that the mood in the country is right. And it is sufficient, I believe, that if people are listening to their constituents, they will vote for this. And they will vote for it by the requisite margin. Well, we've had 11 or 12, maybe 13, who have indicated that they would vote for a balanced budget amendment. As for this proposal, we've been working on getting Republicans on board, establishing Republican unanimity. We now take that effort out to the Democrats.
18%, is that the only thing you'd ever vote for a balanced budget amendment?
Sorry?
Can you, as the previous question I asked, is there any other kind of balanced budget amendment that you would support in the future?
Oh, I see. Well, look, it is not my inclination, I doubt it's the inclination of any of my colleagues, to signal exactly what would or wouldn't be on the table in terms of negotiation if this one were not to pass. Right now, we're focused on getting this one passed. We believe it should pass. We believe anyone who believes in a balanced budget amendment idea should get behind this. And if they have some rational, persuasive explanation as to why they shouldn't, then we'll talk. As of right now, I don't see any reason to make changes.
Well, remember, one of the aspects of this balanced budget amendment is that we provide that after ratification, we have to balance it within 5 years. Yeah, whatever. We'll have to see, but I think Republicans are committed to passing this amendment in the Senate. And I believe we have Republicans and Democrats that are committed in the House to pass their amendment, which will mirror this to a degree. Well, I think over time, all of us have to be, because we can't live the way we're doing right now. No question about it. Yeah, thanks so much. Great to be with all of you.
Good work getting